Okay, so we've looked at quite a bit in terms of JavaScript in the browser and how we can interrogate items and set items and make displays, which is all great if it's all static programming. Let's take a look at what we can do with some event-driven programming. So first of all, what is an event? An event is any action, as it says here in our textbook, that is caused by a user that the web browser responds to. And there are many, many different events. Some of the more common ones are listed down here below in terms of clicks and mouse outs and mouses over. So if a mouse moves over something, key down and key up if you press a key or release a key. So you could see all these different options. And actually, why don't we just do this participation activity? Mouse click. Which do you think mouse click is? Caused by a mouse click. Well, probably click, right? Caused by mouse entering the area defined by an HTML element. Mouse entering the area. Mouse move, mouse over, mouse out. We also have caused by mouse exiting. Well, that's easy. That's mouse out. Mouse entering, mouse over. Mouse moving within the area. So you're already in the element, so you already have your mouse over. Now you have mouse move. And then you have caused by user pushing down on the key. Oops, didn't stay. Pushing down and releasing. So pressing a key on a keyboard to type a single character actually generates two events, which is kind of interesting. So we'll see how we can use these events and have our HTML react and show different items. So we're going to go back to our lab, which we were just using. And we are going to clean it up. We are going to get rid of this console stuff. We don't need this right now. But first, I did want to save it. I'm not sure if I did that from the last video. So I'm going to do that now real quick. There we go, saved. Okay, so I am going to clear out this console stuff. We don't need this. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to leave the script tag. I think we are going to need that. So we have our text. We have our h1 class heading, we have our p tag with the ID info, and nothing else. So first thing I want to look at is a click event. And when you think of a click event, you normally think of clicking a button. So let's create a button. Let's just create a button tag. We'll give it an ID equals my button. And in a burst of creativity, we'll call it click me. And we'll end the button tag. And, well, we're going to want to display something if the button was clicked. That's the whole idea of it. We want to do something if the button is clicked. So we need a place to display that. So if we click a button and we want to display a text, we want to be able to set one of the DOM properties based on the button click. So best way we can do that is we could reuse this paragraph tag here, but I think more interestingly, why don't we create a new paragraph and we'll give it message as the ID. And well, right now, we could put a text in there, nothing yet. And we can end the p tag. Now, if I run this in our browser, here's our button, and I click it, it's clicking, nothing's happening, nothing yet. We need to add some JavaScript for that. So before we can respond to an event, we need to do what is called adding an event listener. We need to be able to listen for events so we can react to them. So we're going to go with our document. And what do we want to add the event listener to? We want to add the event listener to the button. And the button has an ID. So we're going to do our get element by ID. and we're going to give it the ID of my button. And we are going to add the event listener. And what do we want to listen for? Well, we want to listen for the click event. And we want to give it function. And we want to put in, what do we want to do when this happens? Well, we just want to change the content of that p tag with the message ID. So we can do document get element by ID again, but this time we use message. And then we do text content, not context, equals button clicked. Now, you'll notice it didn't change anything yet. Well, it did change the web page. It is rendered. It's waiting for us to do something. So if we click, why did it do nothing? So we need to investigate why this isn't working. But first, before we do anything else, let's refresh our web page and make sure everything's up to date before we dig into our troubleshooting. And I'm just waiting for it to reload and get this back on the page, do a run, give us some more text here in a second, and click, and it's still not working. So now we need to do some troubleshooting. So let's take a look at this and see why it's not working. Okay, so let's take a look at this and figure out why this is not working. Okay, so let's see, document, get element by ID, my button matches. We add the event listener, that looks good. We're looking for the click. Oh, we're missing a comma here because we need to tell what we're doing, what we're listening for, and what we want to do. Well, what we want to do is a function. And this function here, oh, let's say we got an extra parentheses here too. This function that we're building, and maybe if I clean up this syntax a little bit and make it easier to read, we'll give it the function this way, which is probably a little way better than the way we're used to seeing it. Here's our function, right? There's our function. Oops, sorry, step back. Our function is to set the button clicked message in the content of the message. So we need to close out, always check your parentheses and your braces for matching pairs, and we need another one over here. And old JavaScript statements end with semicolons, so we put that in there. So here's our event listener, takes two parameters, what we're listening for, and what we do. And what we do is going to be the function. So, fingers crossed, let's try it again. Yeah, there we go, button click. Okay, so you could see how just changing the format of the way the text is written in the browser or an HTML document makes it a little easier to read and debug. So just keep that in mind. Always line things up. Sometimes it's easier to see things when they're lined up properly. Great. So now we have the ability to work on a click event. Okay, going to give us a little more room here. Actually, maybe I'll open it up in a new tab because we're going to start getting a little longer in the code, and we're going to want to probably see a little more of the web page. Let me move this down because, again, we're losing the top of the web page. And we'll put that back. There we go. So let's go back to our web page. We can kind of shrink this down now because it's kind of going to be in the way. So the next thing we want to look at, the next type of event we're going to look at is a mouse over and a mouse out events. We're going to do two at the same time. So let's add in, and we're gonna keep the script in one area, and we're going to keep the HTML separate. Let's add a box. So the idea I want to try to simulate here is that there is an HTML element on a screen. It's a box. I want to move the mouse over it. I want to move the mouse out of it to see the different events that trigger when the mouse moves over it and out of it. So first, we're going to create a box. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because I already have the code written for the box. And I don't feel like typing it. So there's our box code. And we're going to put it in the div tag. And you can see the div has an ID of box. It has a width, it has a height, and it has a background color of light blue. And we have our p tag of a status. And we'll show you what that status does in a second. Now, let's get a little fancier with our JavaScript now. Let's actually use some variables to do some manipulation instead of just using the full get methods. So let's create a constant. We'll call it box, so we can use that for the box. And now we're going to use our get method. Document.get element by ID box. So this gives us the box object. And we'll do another one for the status. Get element by ID status. Okay. So essentially all we're doing is creating two variables to hold our object properties. And now we don't have to type this whole big message every time. We can just use box and status. So we have our items. Now we have to add our event listeners. So we need to add event listeners for the mouse out and the mouse over. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so we will now do box dot and adding a listener, so it's add event listener, and we're going to do this time the event is mouse over, and we know from the errors before we now do a comma and we do our return, and we are going to do function. And we are going to add the curly brackets. And what do we want to do? Well, why don't we add some text to the status message? Well, we have the status message there. Why don't we do something with that? So let's do status.text content, not that, equals mouse in the box. Very simple statement. Mouse in the box and our function. And let's try it out. Well, we already have it in our other web page. So let's take a look at that. And there it is. There's our light blue box. And nothing. It's not working. Let's go back and take a look and see what we did. Mouse over, comma, function. Sure we have it all properly lined up. Looks like we do. So let's take a look at this in a little further detail. But in the meantime, let's put in the other event listener. Add event listener, mouse out. And we're going to build our function again. Oh, you know what? We have multiple things named function. It's probably not a good idea. So let's give our functions numbers. 1, 2, 3. Now we have different functions. Let's keep it safe that way. Status.text content equals mouse has left the box. Okay. Let's try that, and if that doesn't work, we'll go into a little debugging and see if we can figure it out. Click me still works, that's good. Actually, it's not working either. So that tells me we probably need to refresh the page. So let's do that first and give it a try. We still don't need that. So we have our functions. We know that worked before. Let's give it a run. And while it's rendering, click me, stop working. The mouse isn't working. So something's not quite right. So we need to take a look at that in a little more detail and figure out what broke by adding in our new code. Okay, so this is incorrect. We definitely do not need the 1, the 2, and the 3. The function is a generic function that is used for listeners, so that should be valid the way it is. So that should be fine. So let's clean that up and try that again. And let's scroll up so we can get in here. Click me, still not working. And nothing for the mouse in and mouse out. Let's take a look again and see what else we could find. That looks okay. Here's our new listener. Oh, that's a colon. Should be a semicolon. Let's fix that. It's probably breaking everything. Okay, click me. Well, let's, oh, there it goes. That worked now. And move mouse in, mouse is left. Okay, so we had 2 syntax errors there. First one was self-inflicted when I changed the function to be specific, 1, 2, 3, when it really just needs to be function itself, nothing else. And then the colon versus the semicolon. So yes, syntax errors happen, and sometimes you have to go through a little extra effort and debug it and figure it out. But we did, so that's great. So we now have mouse in, mouse out. Let's open it up into a separate pane, and I'm not going to resize it this time. We get the idea. Clicking works, mouse in, mouse left. Great. So let's go back now, and let's look at what our next event listener is going to be. What do we want to listen to for next? Let's take a look at a key down event. Pressing a key, basically. And we can also do key up as well. Might as well do both. So let's add some more text. And we'll give it an input box this time. An input box would be a good place for us to, well, we're going to type in some characters, so let's have an input. Input type equals text. ID equals, let's see, what do we want to give it? Let's do it name. And we can close that out. And we will, again, we'll put a paragraph in there so we can display it. Okay. And that and a /p. Okay. Did our web page render? It did. Here is our input box, and we can type in it. Nothing to do yet. We haven't added any listeners. So let's add some listeners, and we'll add them under our box events. And we can do, again, we can do a constant, and we could set it to the get element by ID, and the ID would be name. Why don't we give it name input? So why don't we declare another constant? Name input equals document.getElement by ID. Name input. Don't need that. Semicolon. And now we could build our listener. Name input dot add event listener. And we want to add in the key down event. And we're going to do our function again. Function. And what do we want to do on our function? We want to, well, we want to display what we pressed. And we want to display not only the text, but we want to add a little more detail around it this time. So we will do the document dot get element by ID, and I certainly could have made another constant instead, but I'm going to just use key display for now. Key display dot text content equals you pressed colon, and then we'll put in a plus, and then, well, what are we going to put in there? We need to add the key. And so now we need a little more information. We need to be able to get the key that was pressed. So we have the event, we need a little more information. We need that actual key so we can actually display it. So we have the key down event. When an event happens, well, as in almost everything else, an object is created. So we have an event object. And we want to get one of the properties from that object. And in this case, we want to get the key. We want to get the key of that object so we can, well, do something useful with it. So now we have to have a little more. So in our function, we want to use the event. The event that was generated at the time the key was pressed. So we're going to use that event, and we're going to get from that event the key. So that should give us whatever we pressed on the keyboard. So let's see if it rendered, and we can try it out. And it worked. So great. So we were able to build without any syntax errors this time the key down event. And if you notice, it said I pressed delete. Well, if I press the delete key, I get the delete. I press backspace. I press a number. What else? Press number lock. Anything on the keyboard. Insert. Page up, page down, or home, page down. So it captures whatever key it was pressed on the keyboard. Even if it's a non-displayable character, you're still getting that key. And we could do something similar for key up. So we can just copy this. And we can add a key up event and capture the similar output after a key was released. So we'll call it key up. And we probably want to put it in a different spot. Instead of having a key display, why don't we create a second one here? Equals, I want to call it key release. So we have a different display area, so we could see both the effect of both of them. So there's our key release. So we'll change key display here, key release, and that should be all we need to change. And let's try it out. I pressed A and I released A. I pressed D and I released D. Now I'm going to press and hold the R key this time, but I'm not going to let it go. So you could see, well, it's just typing a lot of R's, but you could see I pressed R. It didn't change you released R until I let go, which I'm doing right now. And now it says you released R. So you can get the events when a key was pressed and when a key was released. Okay, so I think you get the basic idea there of how events work. We do have some other interesting events. Let's see if I could find them down here in our book. Here's our event handler registration. Here's our event object we just talked about. We have, let's see if they have it in here about the other events. Apparently they don't. So, okay. So there are a bunch of other events that we can use. We have something called a change event. So a change event happens when the value of an input or a drop-down or a checkbox changes. So we'll be able to take action on when something form value changes. We have an event for submitting. So if you submit a form, you can get that event as well. You can have an event when a Well, when the HTML page is fully loaded, or a CSS is loaded, or maybe an image is loaded. Maybe you're waiting for an image to load and it's a slow connection and you don't want to do anything until after that image is loaded. You have a load event, so you can do something with load as well. So lots of different events, and you can do lots of different neat things with them, as you can see by these examples. So we're coming up on the 25-30 minute mark. Why don't we wrap this one up, and let's see how you do. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I will post the videos, I will post the sample code as always, and good luck. We'll talk to you next time. Have fun. See you in the next one.